This is Mr. Martin. This is section 3.5 overlapping triangles for geometry honors. Sometimes these can get confusing because when the triangles overlap, it's hard to see all the different parts that match up. A couple different techniques for working with the overlapping triangles are to redraw the triangles separately, or if you have different colored highlighters or different colored markers, maybe to trace over the two triangles in different colors. And I think either or both of these techniques will help you if you're having trouble. There's really no new concepts. It's just, dealing with the overlapping triangles. So let's take a look at some examples of some diagrams with overlapping triangles. And we want to name some overlapping triangles in each diagram, and we want to state what method could be used to prove them congruent. For the first example, we're given that ZW is congruent to YX. I would probably switch that around to make it YX so that they correspond. And angle YXW is congruent to ZWX. Well, they're right angles, so we know that they're congruent. And we can actually see here that this side would be reflexive. So if you're having trouble seeing the two triangles, I'm going to use the technique of highlighting them different colors. So I've got this triangle here, and then I've got this triangle here. Okay, and we can see that they have the sides on the left and the right. They have the right angles in the bottom corners, and they have that reflexive side. So if we wanted to prove these congruent, we could prove them congruent by side angle side. Okay, and then if you wanted to draw the triangles separately, here's triangle ZWX, and here's triangle YXW, and if we mark the things that are congruent, we're given these two, we're given these are right angles, so they're congruent, and this side is reflexive. So you can see when you draw them separately, it's really easy to see that we've got side angle side here. All right, moving on to number 2. Feel free to pause the video anytime and try these on your own. We've got ABC, so this is this angle up in the top corner. I'm going to mark it red. And then DCB is this one. And I also have these two smaller angles in there. So I'm going to go ahead and redraw these triangles that are overlapping separately. So here's the triangle on the left, and this is going to be triangle ABC. And the triangle on the right, this is BCD, and if I mark the pieces that are congruent, I've got this angle, and then these two small angles over here. So, and then we can see in the picture up here that they overlap at BC. We also see over here, here's BC and here's segment BC. So this, again, this would be a reflexive side. So we would be able to prove that these two triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. So this is a really good case for when drawing these two triangles separately. It's really going to make things much more clear. All right, moving on to example 3. Again, I've got these two triangles that overlap. I'm going to redraw them separately so I get a little bit clearer view of what's going on. So I've got the triangle on the left. So I have L, P, and N. And then I've got the triangle on the right. This is M, that's O, and that's also L. So you notice they both have L at the top. This angle up here is going to be reflexive. So let me just move this stuff out of the way a little bit. Let's make it a little bit smaller. There we go. All right, so I can see that LO and LP are congruent. So here's LP and here's LO. And then I've got LO and ON congruent to LP and PM. So if I add those together, I'm going to get LN on one side and LM on the other side. So I've got these two segments would also be congruent. And we already mentioned we have the reflexive angles in the top. So we could prove these triangles congruent by side angle side. I know it takes a little bit more effort, maybe about 12 or 13 more seconds to redraw the triangles separately and mark your picture, but I think it's really going to help you be more successful in completing these proofs. Okay, so next three examples, we're going to separate and redraw the indicated triangles and identify, this should be any common angles or sides. So this is going to be reflexive sides or angles. So just separate these. I've got, and if you want to pause the video and just work these out on your own, that's fine. I've got ABC on this side, and I've got DCB on this side, and we can see that they have, this is a B up here. Let's try that again. B. We can see they have a reflexive side BC. So in this case, it would be BC on the left is congruent to CB on the right by the reflexive property. Okay, so you notice I switched them because in order to get the triangle on the right to fit on the triangle on the left, I have to flip it. I just don't slide it. So C is actually going to end on B. That's why I have B here and C here, because those are the ones that match on the different triangles. That's a very important concept. You don't want to lose a point every time on that because you don't have them in the right order. So we're looking at triangle EFG and HGF. So let's redraw those. So here's EFG. And here's HGF. And this is kind of similar, just a little bit differently shaped. We've got FG congruent to GF. Again, because I have to flip this triangle, flip it to make it land on the other one. All right, so here I've got JML. So let's draw that one. JML and then NKL. NKL is over here. Here's NKL. And we can see they both have angle L. Angle L over here. Okay, so angle L is reflexive. Okay, so in the directions when it says common angles or segments, they're really looking for things that are reflexive. All right, so moving on to some proofs. For example 7, we're given that AX is congruent to AY, and I know that CX and AB are perpendicular, so I know that these are right angles over there, and BY is perpendicular to AC, so I know that these are right angles, and I want to prove that AB and AC are congruent. So number one, I've got right angles on both sides of these, but I'm not going to really need both of them. So I'm going to put a 1 here, and I'm going to put a 2 here, because really I'm only going to need those angles because I can tell right now I'm going to get these two triangles that overlap congruent. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw them separately so it's a little more clear. So I've got the triangle on the top. This is triangle A, B, Y. Alright, and this is angle 2 in there, and I know it's a right angle. And then I've got the other triangle on the bottom. So this is A, so notice they have angle A. We can see they overlap over here too. And this is angle 1, which is a right angle. And this is point C, and this is point X. And we had AX and AY were congruent. All right, so we see in our picture I've got angle side, so I either need another side or another angle, but we already discussed that we've got angle A here is reflexive, so we can get those congruent. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and work this out. Why don't you do the same, and then when you start it up, you can check to make sure your solution is correct. All right, so here's the proof. You notice I got the triangles congruent by angle, side angle, which again is fairly easy to see once you look at the two separated triangles. In order to get the right angles from the perpendiculars, so from these two steps, we can state that these are right angles, and then once we know these are right angles, we know that they're congruent. We know angle A is congruent to itself by the reflexive property, and then you get the triangles congruent, and then we have the corresponding parts congruent. So um, you know, it's really going to be up to you to make sure that you write down your questions and ask them when you get to class. You know, if you forget to ask your questions and then something pops up on the quiz or the test that you had a question on and that you never got answered, that's not going to be too fun. So, you know, I know I keep saying it over and over, but it's really important that you do that and you follow through with your questions. All right, moving on to the next example. Again, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and then when I restart it, I'll have the solution. So if you want to pause the video too and work out your solution and compare it to mine when you come back. All right, so this one is a little bit trickier than it may have looked at the beginning because we actually need to prove two sets of triangles congruent. So this is kind of a preview of things that are going to come in another section. But what we want to do first is prove that these top two overlapping triangles are congruent, triangle EFG and triangle HGF. So if we pull those apart and look at what we have, we were given that EG and HF were congruent. That was our first piece of given information. And we were given that these two angles were congruent, these angles in the corners here. And we also have this reflexive side on the top. So two pieces of given information, reflexive side, I've got the two triangles congruent. Now, once I get these two triangles congruent, I want to look at the bottom overlapping triangles, which I've redrawn over here. And we can see we've already got FH and GE that was given in step 1. And now I can get FE and GH because those are corresponding parts. Those are these two segments here, so they're part of both sets of triangles. Those are corresponding parts, CPCTC. And the bottom segment is part of both triangles, so that's reflexive. Again, notice it's HE is congruent to EH. And then I can get the two triangles that we're looking at congruent by side, side, side. And remember to put the steps in parentheses that you got your pieces from. You know, so this one's a little bit trickier. You may want to go back to this one again and retry it at some point before the next quiz. And if you have any questions, as always, I know I'm very repetitive with that, but as always, if you have any questions, make sure you write them down and ask me the next time you see me.